Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the best number CD540. This is their best core capping block. And a capping block is a tool, like so many locksmithing tools, they're really just meant to not only save you time, but to permit you to do the job in a way in which the possibility of error is reduced. A capping block will hold your plug. It will allow you to load the plug and permit you to do so in such a way where your hands are a bit more freed up in the prop position. You can really free up both of your hands if you were to bolt that down to your desk or to your workbench, or in your mobile situation, because that will permit you to really have both hands free as you're, pinning the cylinder. I would certainly recommend bolting that down to your bench if you can. It's just a typical 1/4 thread is all it is. I know that this is 1/4, so that's all that is. You can easily do that. Then the way that this tool works is, whether you have it just on your desktop or bolted down, doesn't matter. You're going to have 3 holes that are here, and those holes are meant to permit you to have the core pushed in to the front side. And when you insert this pin, I'm going to put it in the middle hole. Well, Best makes 3 different length cores. 5-pin, which I've never seen. It does exist though. 6-pin, the most common, and 7-pin right behind 6-pin in terms of common. So if you're doing 6-pin, you're going to push that stop pin, and when you insert your core into the block, you'll have something to push against or to rest against. You'll know at that point that you're in alignment at that moment when you've got the stop pin installed. Then from the top, all you really have are your holes. So the back of the core is obviously what would be the front of the core, because we combinate tip to bow. You're going to start back here in the appropriate hole. Okay? You'll be able to drop your bottom pins, your masters, your build-up pin, your control pin, your top pin, your spring. And what's nice about this tool, and where I think the tool really pays off, is that you use your capping tool. This is a ejector pin, but the capping tool is like this, just a lot smaller. But the length of this pin is that when you drop your brass cap into here and then you seat the cap, the length of the head of the capping tool, when it's flush, that's the proper distance to set the cap to. So you're not setting it too deep, you're not setting it too shallow. The compression on the spring needs to be based on the best design, the way that it was designed to. You're in an A2 system, you've got a plug total of 23, A3 is 16, A4 is 14. It's nice to have the reference documents available, because you don't have to keep all that memorized. There is a link below this video to a document called Installation Instructions, or just Instructions. And what they really do is tell you how to use the block. So before you use the block, you're going to want to take your, they say to use your ejector pin. This isn't included, this is separate, but it's like a capping tool. This is typical material, and it's the right size for doing the job. For being an ejector pin, which we'll talk about in a moment. But the first thing you do is you'll take your core and push your control sleeve into what would be the secured position. Moving the control sleeve so that it engages the inside of the housing will align the chambers from the plug itself, the control sleeve, and then the top of the core. Then you can drop pins into it. So according to the installation instructions, Insert the ejector pin into the notch on the back of the sleeve and push the control lug into the thrown or extended position. Remove the ejector pin from the notch. Then they want you to insert the ejector pin into the cavity between the lug and core body and hold the plug in the thrown position. Use your thumb and forefinger to rotate the core until the keyway is straight up and down. Okay, so what they're saying to do is to make sure that your plug is aligned as well. Remove the ejector pin from the cavity. You'll know that you're not aligned when you start to drop your pins, and they don't go very far. So what they then want you to do is insert the ejector pin into chamber 7, which would be in small format, of course. It's going to be the chamber closest to the face of the cylinder because it's combinated tip to bow. So you would drop that down there, and that's going to permit you to keep everything in alignment as you start to load your material. Okay. You of course have to know position 1. You know, if 7 is going to be back here, in a 7-pin cylinder, this would be 1. In a 6-pin cylinder, this would be 1. In a 5-pin cylinder, that would be 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you're doing a 6-pin cylinder, drop it into chamber 7. Yeah, it'll be chamber 6. Okay, and that'll just keep everything aligned. It's longer and will fit through the top of the portion of the control sleeve and down into the plug. Then basically combinate your cylinder, your core, according to your bidding. And once you get some of the chambers, even one of the chambers basically combinated, you'll be able to remove your ejector pin. They say go, combinate everything until you get to, what would be chamber, 5, 6, or 7, and remove your ejector pin and then combinate that chamber. Insert the stop pin into the appropriate hole in the side of the capping block to align the core barrels with the holes in the capping block. Okay, yeah, that probably should have already been done. That stop pin needs to be inserted so that works. And then on page 2 of the instructions, or maybe it's 3, they do define those different areas. 6-pin hole, hole for 6-pin, hole for 7, hole for 5-pin. That capping tool is referred to there after you get your bottom pin, your control, your masters or your control pin, your top pin, your spring, your cap. You'll be able to then cap your core. You'll individually cap them as the best style. This will, of course, work with only best individually capped styles. If you're doing a Falcon style, you can certainly use this to cap. You can use it to load, but you'll have to, Best has a slide spring cover style. I believe they do individually capped as well. The tool can work up to the point where you have to then cap the top of the cylinder. If the core is not operating smoothly while you are loading it, do not tap the core against a metallic block. Use block made of nylon or an equivalent material. You might have some sort of burr, some sort of tiny shard of metal that's preventing smooth operation if it's pinned correctly. If it doesn't work, what I do is when I combinate these, I will, before I cap them, I will hold my finger over the springs and I'll test all my keys. And once I know it all works, I then go through and cap them. So what you'll do, though, in the event of needing to eject all of the pins, the spring and the cap, that's where the ejector tool comes in. Those holes in the bottom of the plug are for that purpose exactly. And as you push this through, all of the contents of the chamber will come out. It's all to be discarded, and then you start over. So I'd like to test with my finger to make sure that it all works, so I don't individually cap. And I don't, I prefer a spring style. It's a little bit easier. Locksmiths, I think, like the path of least resistance, and a individually capped chamber or a continuous slide spring cover, in my mind, are the same sort of product. High security cylinders will have individually tapped holes where they will insert a plug cap that is basically a set screw. And that sort of concept defeats a comb attack where you want to forcibly, lift everything out of the core and eject it so that you can operate the cylinder. Those tapped set screws really prevent that sort of attack. So finally, there is also a link below this video to the product brochure that will allow you to review all of the locksmithing equipment as it pertains to best cores. And the combinating kits are there, the pinning kits are there, the combinator is there. That's not an uncommon tool to sell. The key combinator, the advantage of that tool is that it cuts the keys exactly the way the system is designed to have the keys cut. When you duplicate keys on a rotary cutter, it works, but because you have a round cutter that might be 2.5 inch or so in diameter, if I'm cutting my key, my cut is actually going to be radiused. Well, the combinator creates a straight cut when you punch or move the die through the key, and you're getting a flat cut, which is what and how they're designed to work, not where a rotary cutter is cutting, when you're on a duplicator, a manual or a semi-automatic duplicator. So the combinator's a common tool, and that tool is nice because you can set it up for different systems. You can do an A3, you can do an A2, obviously. You can do an A4, even an A3. Not unheard of. I actually just shipped an A3 key combinator. The key gauge is there. A micrometer is there. The capping press is there. That's really handy. If you're doing a lot of cores, you're going to want to find an easier way or a faster way to cap everything rather than doing it individually. The capping pin, the ejector tool, tweezers are there. Other fixtures that you can use, layout trays, marking trays. Graphite, you'll want to use the proper sort of lubricant intended for the cylinder and nothing but that so that you get the proper service life. Other items are down in that service equipment catalog. There's also a link to a document called Cut Sheet. It's just an overview out of the service equipment catalog, giving you only that information on the CD540 capping block. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the best products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Let's take some basic dimensions. Overall width, about 1.25 inches. Overall height, 2 inch. Thickness of the tool, 1.25 inches. Weighs about 0.65 pounds, and I'm going to say that this is steel with a black oxide finish. And I like black oxide because it gives you a nice look over the life of the unit. Black oxide, like on drill bits, keep the drill bit looking relatively new over its entire life. Any questions on the CD540 best capping block or any other best product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.